What if Ned Stark convinced Jon Snow not to join the Night's Watch, Part 2? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. Melisandre steps in the newly constructed temple of R'hllor in King's Landing to greet her new worshippers.
From the fires which burn before you, I have gleaned the future and saw the arrival of our new king. Once bound for the Night's Watch, he rode south alongside his father, not as a mere bastard, but as a protector of Lord Stark and the city.
The crowds all lean forward to hear her proclamation, some knights laughing as they know what will come next. As she raises her hands, the flames roar upwards until it touches the ceiling.
The flames reveal the truth of our queen's crimes and our children. They were creatures born from sin, an unholy union between brother and sister. To keep this a secret, she slew her king. But it is thanks to Lord Stannis and Eddard the lions were captured, and Tywin Lannister was beaten back when he tried to sack us once more. It was our king who fought and slew the mountain and held the city back.
Meanwhile, as this is happening, the new king sits with his small council to hear their words. Although known as Jon Snow, he has now been named Aenys II. Although they did manage to defeat Tywin, Renly gathered his army from the Reach and Stormlands. He outnumbers their current forces, and if it comes to battle, it will be bloody. Aenys considers this situation and then orders one of the prisoners to be brought before him. The heavy wooden doors creak open, and Tyrion Lannister is let in. His usual sardonic grin plays across his lips.
Your Grace, it's not often a king summons me. Shall I assume wine will be served, or are we skipping straight to the beheading?
That depends, Tyrion Lannister. How good are you at listening?
My ears work perfectly well, though I suspect I won't like what I hear.
On the contrary, how does Lord Tyrion sound to you?
You cannot be serious, Your Grace.
What about the accusations against him?
Ah, yes, the infamous dagger. I've lost count of how many times I've been accused of crimes I didn't commit. But let me remind you, I won my trial by combat.
With Renly, I'd rather have the Lannister gold mines on our side.
A pragmatic king. How refreshing. To become Lord of Castle Rock, a generous offer, considering my family's reputation among your council. A reputation well earned. I have one condition, Your Grace. My brother Jaime's life is to be spared. Whatever else you decide for my family, he is to remain unharmed. Meet this condition and I will become your man. If not, then you will learn just what little people can do.
Very well. So long as Jaime serves loyally and gives no reason to execute him, he is yours. Now, shall you bend the knee?
Bend the knee? Am I not short enough already?
Must you make everything so difficult?
Oh, if I'm to serve you, I most certainly will.
With that matter settled, more pressing matters rear their ugly head. With the Lannisters' support, they now begin gathering their allies. Nedd leads a force down to reinforce King's Landing, while Brynden Tully is sent to Lysa Arryn, urging her to send reinforcements from the Vale. Melisandre learns that Renly has been spreading a story of how Aenys' ascension as king is actually a plot between the North and Stannis to seize the Iron Throne with a puppet. But as he is about to leave the court, he hears footsteps and a figure approaches him. Aenys is surprised to see the man, an older man in a black cloak, which marks him as a man of the Night's Watch. Aenys thinks back to his desire to join that order. Although it was only a few months ago, it feels like a lifetime, with everything that happened long ago. He beckons the man forward and listens to his words. Aenys at first thinks the man is there to ask for more men, but that is one thing he requests. There is more to the situation. With him is a pickled jar, and as the ranger recounts his story, the king's eyes widen as he hears it. According to him, the hand within came from a dead ranger, a ranger who rose up in the dead of night and tried to murder the Lord Commander. The ranger urges for help, asking the king to send men and supplies to fortify the failing watch. Aenys considers these words and promises he will do everything he can, but as he leaves the throne room, a familiar figure approaches him.
Must you sneak around like this?
As your new master of whispers, I assumed sneaking was part of my duties. This man brings dark words.
Dark wings, dark words. Do you see the dead in your fires as well?
I can sense your mockery, but the fires have revealed much before. It warns of trouble brewing in the north, ones which only a king can solve.
There is enough trouble here.
This is the troubles of men. Therefore, it should be men who settle it. But in the north, only one can bring order.
Aenys knows better than to try and argue with her, so instead agrees to visit the wall himself. Unsurprisingly, Stannis is greatly displeased by this. Even when he sees the hand, he reminds the king that they are already at war. But Nedd seems a bit more open to the idea. He's partially motivated by worry about his brother, but he has long sensed trouble beyond the wall. Nedd promises to help keep things together in the south long enough for Aenys to finish matters here. Stannis grumbles and vows to deal with Renly as Aenys makes preparations to sail off. Weeks later, the king rides alongside the wall, braving the bitter winds of the north with Melisandre. When they finally reach the wall, the sight of it takes Jon's breath away, as it always does. A colossal monument of ice, its jagged surface glimmers faintly in the pale sun. In contrast, Castle Black is far less impressive, and he finds Lord Commander Jorah Mormont in the Great Hall, nursing his wounded arm in a sling.
King Aenys. When I asked for men, I didn't think the king would come here.
You didn't leave me much choice with that warning of yours, Commander.
Aye.
He tells them of the attack, his voice steady despite the horrors he recounts. The dead came in the night, their eyes glowing with icy malice after they dragged them into the castle for examination. They moved with inhuman speed and strength, tearing through men and steel alike. Only fire stopped them and hacked them to pieces. Aenys examines the White's hand. The skin is gray and mottled, the fingers twisted into claws. It twitches faintly, even in death, as if some remnant of the dark magic animating it still lingers. Melisandre steps closer, her lips moving in quiet prayer as her hand hovers over the grotesque relic.
The Great Other's hand stretches far.
And it will take more than swords and shields to stop it. You've seen what's coming. Now you must prepare for it.
You'll have your men. I'll inform my brother to send troops to the wall. I can send more once this war is over.
Before he leaves, another member of the Night's Watch calls to him, Maeston Aemon, who requests to return to King's Landing with him. But before they can depart, reports soon arrive of wildlings, an entire host of them assaulting the wall. Cursing, Aenys orders ravens to be sent to rob at once. With Aenys gone, the war effort falls to Lord Stannis, leading it to be called the War of the Stags. After weeks of preparation, Renly commands an army of nearly 100,000 strong, drawing from all the chivalry of the south. In contrast, Stannis commands a hodgepodge force consisting of the remnants of his, Tywin's, and Robb's armies. But what they lack in numbers, they make up for in experience. The first clashes between their armies are fierce, the forests and fields of the Stormlands soaked with blood as Stannis works to check their advance and hopefully sway a few more men to his cause. This is harder than expected though, as Stannis is not loved in the Stormlands the same way Renly is. While he does have royal backing, the king's absence is noted by the lords, who hesitate to send men to fight for them. Renly's bannermen eagerly throw themselves at Stannis' lines again and again, yet Stannis acquits himself and never fails to hold the lines. He skirmishes, evades, and ambushes them in battles that favor him. Each skirmish takes its toll on Renly's army, their confidence eroding as Stannis bleeds them dry. Some even begin to question why they are serving Renly and cross over to Stannis. The stalemate drags on for weeks. Stannis, though outnumbered, slowly narrows the gap. He rarely engages in proper battles save for when he finds favorable terrain, forcing Renly into costly assaults. Supplies dwindle, tempers flare, and the cracks in Renly's coalition begin to show. But Stannis knows time is not on his side. Every day the war drags on, Renly's forces have a chance to regroup, resupply, and reinforce. Finally, he is forced to confront Renly in an open battle. Even with this predicament, Stannis chooses his ground well, selecting a high ridge surrounded by thickets. Stannis places his men there and digs in for an attack. The ensuing battle is a brutal slog that favors the defenders as Renly's men struggle to reach the ridge, their formations broken and their troops in disarray. Here they are met with the spears of Stannis' men. Even when the knights advance on foot, they make little headway while the ridge protects their flank. Finally, after 5 failed assaults, Renly orders an all-out attack, and thousands of soldiers stream forward, preparing to crush them with sheer numbers. For a moment, this strategy seems to work as Renly's men begin to break Stannis' defenses. But suddenly, a hail of arrows fly from the hedges and thickets from the hidden archers Stannis positioned there before the battle. Chaos spreads in the Stormlanders' ranks, causing men to drop their weapons and flee the battle. The situation only worsens when a charge by Stannis' light cavalry, commanded by Just Massey, smashes into their flanks and forces a mass retreat. Renly tries to rally his men, but it is no use, and Brienne escorts him to safety. His army begins to crumble. Wary of Stannis' wrath, many of his bannermen bend the knee to him. As his men celebrate the victory, a figure appears at the edge of Stannis' camp, Melisandre, who reports the situation on the wall. She explains how a wildling horde had attacked while Aenys was there. Thankfully, Robb Stark's arrival saves them, and the wildlings are defeated. The king is now in King's Landing and sent her to help Stannis. The Hand growls that Aenys only arrived once the war was over, but gives Melisandre a task. Some rebel lords refuse to yield. Pockets of resistance form, lords too proud or too angry to swear fealty. Among them is Renly's band, which escapes to Storm's End. They meet up with Randyll Tarly, who finds them there. However, as they regroup and plan their next move, a chill runs through the camp, and a shadowy figure makes its way through the tent. Renly's knights can only gasp out in surprise, but the experienced Randyll is faster. He shoves Renly out of the way and parries the strike. He shouts for them to escape as he battles with the creature. They escape into the wilderness, and the next day Stannis' men find the body of Randyll. Though they search for the others, they are nowhere to be seen, and Renly and his followers flee across the narrow sea. Here they meet up with the Golden Company, who are conveniently marching east to join with Daenerys Targaryen. Among them is a man claiming to be Aegon VI, who hopes to unite his branch with Daenerys. The mention of another pretender makes his blood boil, and he promises to crush this Aenys. Eager to bolster their ranks, they welcome the exiles into their force. The journey to Meereen is difficult, as Daenerys finds herself under siege by a coalition of slavers. However, the presence of the Golden Company turns the tide, and she welcomes them as heroes. Renly Baratheon, humbled but unbroken, stands before Daenerys Targaryen in the Great Hall of Meereen. Brienne of Tarth stands at his side, silent but resolute, along with a few hundred men from the Reach and Stormlands.
You are the rightful queen of Westeros. I once sought the Iron Throne myself, but I see now that my claim was folly. I offer my service to you, not as a king, but as your hand. I know Westeros, its politics, its lords, its weaknesses. Let me help you reclaim it. I have heard tales of your exploits, even in the Seven Kingdoms. Together we shall bring it to its knees.
Daenerys studies him, her violet eyes narrowing. She listens to Renly and Brienne recount their flight from Westeros, their betrayal by Stannis in the north, and their tales of Aenys Targaryen, who they label a false dragon.
He is no true Targaryen. He is a puppet, a tool of the North and Stannis Baratheon. They used sorcery to prop him up. A shadow assassin tried to murder me in my tent.
Daenerys tenses at the mention of shadow magic. She recalls her own experiences with the warlocks of Qarth, and knows just how dangerous it is. Yet, as she looks at Renly, she remains suspicious.
You claim you wish to serve me, but you are the usurper's own blood.
To my deep regret. Who better to stop the usurpers? If you believed Robert was bad, you would despise Stannis. He is cruel, cold, and brutal. He worships a strange fire god which burns people at the stake, while this Aenys is said to be a bastard born of Nedd Stark. I had hoped to stop this evil from spreading, but I realize I cannot do it alone.
The room is silent for a long moment, her gaze flickering to her advisors. The stories of shadows and false dragons unsettles her, but she sees the opportunity Renly represents. Westeros. His knowledge could be invaluable. Finally, she nods.
Very well, Lord Renly. You shall be my hand. But betray me, and no shadow assassin will be necessary to end you.
You have my loyalty, Your Grace. I will not fail you.
This alliance starts with a marriage. Renly finds himself a witness to the betrothal of Aegon VI and Daenerys. With the Seven Kingdoms united, their only hope of conquering Westeros is by joining their strength, something Renly advises. The invasion begins with the Targaryen fleet landing on the Stormlands, their region still reeling from the war. As many of Renly's men are from that area, they know the area well, and the first blow lands on the Isle of Tarth. In the dead of night, Brienne lands alongside Renly, where they meet with Lord Tarth. They warn that a massive army is arriving, and that they shall be overwhelmed if they do not surrender now. They warn of hordes of sellswords and freedmen, legions of Unsullied, and even some Dothraki. Selwyn Tarth glances up at the sky and notices Daenerys' dragons circling above, their roars echoing across the narrow straits. Reluctantly, he yields his castle. Renly, a Stormlord himself, directs the campaign, his knowledge of the terrain and the loyalties of the local lords proving invaluable. Now with the Unsullied riding at his back, he has an army of unbreakable discipline. The initial attacks are swift and brutal, with Daenerys' dragons sowing terror among the defenders. Castles burn, and lords who once swore to Stannis now bend the knee to the Mother of Dragons for fear of destruction. However, the Reach remains unmoved. With Renly unable to offer Margaery as a queen, the Tyrells see no benefit in aiding Daenerys' cause. Instead, they pledge their forces to Stannis. Daenerys responds with fire and fury. Her dragons descend upon the Reach, laying waste to fields and fortresses. Meanwhile, the Reachmen who accompanied Renly take advantage of the chaos to strike and reclaim their lands. Raids are launched in the castles while men are out, allowing them to take them by surprise. Others simply ride ahead and warn their kin of the dragons and the fate of those who defy them. But the dragons aren't the only ones causing chaos. While they terrorize the larger castles, the Golden Company blitzes into the Reach. Even without siege equipment, their elite archers and elephants can break castle defenses, battering down gates and cutting through defenders. This lets them storm through these defenders with minimal casualties. For the first time in over a century, the Seven Kingdoms witness the devastation of dragonfire, and the sight shocks the realm. Major castles like Horn Hill, Peak, and Golden Grove face the wrath of these dragons, while their armies are scattered by the sight of them, leaving them easy prey to the Unsullied and Dothraki who accompany them. Yet, even as the Tyrells scramble to defend their lands and prepare Highgarden for a siege, Daenerys' army faces an unexpected attack from Dorne. Upon hearing how Aenys killed the Mountain and executed Lord Tywin, their allegiance was easy to secure, simply requesting their skulls as payment. Now a Dornish army led by the Red Viper lash out and nip at their heels. Though the Unsullied can handle any conventional foe, they are unprepared for the hit-and-run tactics of the Dornish, who are perhaps the only group who can match the Dothraki's speed and aggression. They strike along the marshes, trying to sever the Targaryen supply lines with the Stormlands before disappearing down the Boneway. Meanwhile, Stannis, Ned Stark, and Aenys II rally their forces, gathering men from the Riverlands, Crownlands, and Vale to join their army. Word is sent to Robb to rally his army, while Jaime and Tyrion rush to the Westerlands to gather their forces and reinforce the Tyrells. Even with these efforts, it seems like the first is closing for them as Daenerys focuses on taking Oldtown. While her dragons continue to rain fire on their foes, scattering any opposition, Renly leads the forces to strike at the city with Jon Connington. But they receive unexpected help from the north. Though Tyrion is technically the Lord of the Westerlands, few truly respect him, and some houses including Crackhall, Swift, and Lefford cross their banners and offer to join Daenerys. The sight of the dragons overhead reminds them of the Field of Fire, and they choose submission over annihilation. With these forces, they continue their siege of Oldtown, pressing the city hard as they desperately call for relief. Though it seems like that is but a distant dream, until one day when the army wakes up to see a cloud of dust in the distance. There were reports of a Lannister force approaching from the north, but they were days away. However, as they draw nearer, they see the distinctive armor of Jaime Lannister. The men can only scramble about in surprise as he approaches, having ridden ahead of his army with his cavalry. They smash through the enemy camp, cutting through the freedmen who assemble to stop them and avoid the Unsullied. However, the Dothraki are not so easily startled, and a force is soon sent to meet them. Jaime calls for a retreat just as they begin surrounding his army. He manages to escape with some of his men, but his force is badly bloodied. Other relief efforts by Stannis and Nedd are equally unsuccessful, as the dragons can easily scatter whatever forces they have. Soon, Old Town falls and leaves the royalists in a difficult position. Stannis and Aenys recognize the futility of facing dragons in open battle, instead switching to guerrilla tactics, much like the Dornish. Their army splits into smaller, more mobile units, striking at supply lines, raiding camps, and disappearing into the terrain. Nedd, Stannis, Jaime, Barristan, and Loras Tyrell all command these units and frustrate Daenerys' army. While they cannot keep her army from taking territory, Daenerys' army starts to feel its toll. While she continues her advance, her army begins to struggle to resupply and must turn to foraging and raiding, leaving them open to ambushes while slowly turning the people against them. The plan frustrates Daenerys, who finds herself unable to pin down her enemies. Though they can wipe out isolated bands of raiders, they cannot target any major leaders. The stalemate stretches on until reinforcements arrive from the north. Robb Stark leads the host, riding through the Riverlands. Here they finally have a foe they can meet in open battle, as Aegon, Renly, and their troops rush to meet the young wolf. The sight of these reinforcements breathes new life into the royalist forces, who rally over to their side. But Robb chooses his battlefield carefully, opting to operate in Highheart, where the hill gives him an advantage. He doesn't just bring Northmen to his army. After his success in the Wall, he is now accompanied by free folk and giants. The wildlings prove to be an excellent addition to his army, as his wargs and raiders harass the army as they march, further slowing their advance and giving time for the rest of the army to regroup. Aenys, Stannis, and Nedd survey the terrain, knowing the steep inclines and scattered boulders make it difficult to storm. It's a gamble to face them openly, but it's their best chance to stop their invasion. The Golden Company forms the vanguard, their elephants alongside them, with the Unsullied moving behind. The dragons circle, their shadows looming over the battlefield. The first wave begins with the infantry. The Unsullied advance up the hill, their disciplined ranks undeterred by the arrows raining down from above. The Royalists hold their positions, archers firing relentlessly while shield walls brace for impact, but the terrain works against them. As they reach the top, they find giants waiting for them. For once, their vaunted spear walls don't mean anything as the giants' clubs and hammers smash through the Unsullied ranks, starting to break their formation. The Golden Company fares no better, as even with combined arms of infantry, cavalry and archers don't break their lines as the giants retreat behind the shield walls of the Westerosi men, who return fire from their superior vantage point. The battle here is fierce, as Westerosi fights Westerosi, offering no quarters to these exiles and traitors. In the center of this force are Aegon VI and Renly. But as their forces begin to falter, the two try to rally their men to no avail, and soon find themselves surrounded and captured. As the infantry falters, Daenerys sends her cavalry next. The Dothraki screamers charge up the slopes, their war cries piercing the air. But the narrow paths and uneven ground make them easy targets for the royalist spearmen. The defenders hold firm, refusing to give ground even as the Dothraki crash against them like waves against a rock. Then come the elephants. Towering and unstoppable, they lumber up the hill, their tusks swinging through the defenders' ranks. For a moment, it seems the tide is turning. But the giants step further. Armed with massive spears, they hurl them with deadly precision, or simply wrestle them to the ground. Those that don't fall face the storm of javelins and arrows. With her army struggling, Daenerys must use her trump card, her dragons. Drogon, Rhaegal, and Viserion descend from the skies, their roars shaking the battlefield. Their fire rains down, engulfing the royalist lines in flames. Men and giants scream as they are consumed, their shields and armor useless against the inferno. The royalists retaliate with massive scorpions and ballista. As Rhaegar swoops low, a bolt fired from one of the scorpions finds its mark, striking the dragon's flank. Rhaegar screams in pain, his wings faltering as another bolt pierces his shoulder. The mighty beast crashes to the ground, crushing soldiers beneath him as he writhes in agony. The royalist forces see their chance and surge forward, spears and swords in hand, but Rhaegal thrashes wildly, his tail and claws carving through those who come too close. Aenys pushes through the chaos. Rhaegal turns to face him, smoke curling from his nostrils, his golden eyes blazing with pain and fury.
Stop!
To his astonishment, Rhaegal hesitates. The dragon snarls, his head lowering slightly, but he does not unleash his fire. Aenys steps closer, his sword still raised. The battlefield falls eerily silent as soldiers watch the strange scene unfold. Even Daenerys, circling high above on Drogon, stares in disbelief. But seeing this hesitation, Rhaegal takes the opportunity and flees. He flaps his wings and flies away, leaving the crowd stunned. Daenerys stares down at Aenys, her face a mixture of shock and rage. Then she orders a retreat.
A true Targaryen.
As the army retreats, Stannis approaches Jon and places a hand on his shoulder.
You may have just turned the tide of the war.
That's our theory. Westeros is a land filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey across the Seven Kingdoms and beyond, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.